Welcome to Sparkz Energy Explained podcast. Each episode, we unpack the biggest challenges and opportunities in the future of the energy industry. It's big ideas, real talk, and we have one rule here, BYOB, bring your own batteries. It's our first episode of Sparkz Energy Explained. My name is Michelle Bandur. I'm Vice President of Marketing and Communication for Sparkz. I'm a former TV journalist turned storyteller for Sparkz. I'll be here leading discussions for our podcast along with CEO and founder of Sparkz, Sanjeev Malhotra. Hi, Sanjeev.
Hi, Michelle.
So, you came to me shortly after you hired me and said, I want to do a podcast. Why? Why do you want to do a podcast? What do you hope our listeners and followers of Sparkz, gain from this podcast?
Firstly, Michelle, I'd done one podcast, but I'm very new to this world of podcasts. So it was something very novel, very unique for me. So I was like, why not? Here's Michelle. She comes from the world of media and communication. Maybe throw something where I might appear intelligent. So I said podcasts. So that was one reason. But yes, I think we definitely want to get our message across, which gradually we have been through social media. But hey, I'm told podcasts reach a lot of people around the globe. So why not?
Yeah. And this is, your platform where you can send your message. People might not know what Sparkz is. What is it and what do we do?
So that could be a very lengthy answer, or I could keep it fairly in one sentence. I think I'll try to keep it somewhere in between. Sparkz is actually creating the ecosystem, if you may. And I'll explain subsequently what I mean by the ecosystem. But we're creating the ecosystem for lithium batteries here in the United States. So lithium batteries, unknown to quite a few people, unknown to me, even though I used to be a scientist working on lithium batteries almost about 3 decades ago. Now you can possibly guess my age. But unknown to a lot of people, lithium batteries were developed here in the United States. They were developed here using taxpayer dollars, your money, my money, at our public universities, at our national labs. But when it came to manufacturing, everything moved overseas. It moved to Asia, predominantly to China. So what Sparkz is endeavoring to do, and I think we're making fairly decent progress, is create the ecosystem to essentially manufacture these lithium batteries from step one to the finish line. And that I'll talk about subsequently. Don't want to get too technical here at the start of the podcast, but that's basically what I mean by the ecosystem. Is basically, let's call it mine to market. That's the ecosystem. From the extraction, although we don't do the extraction of the minerals that go in, our partners do, but we procure the minerals from them and we process it and make it into a finished product that goes and powers whatever the end application is. So that's the ecosystem.
And Sparkz is the only company doing that in the United States.
Correct.
I've heard you say the largest outside of China.
That is correct too.
Why is that important? Why is it important that it's made here in the USA?
For several reasons. Predominantly, look, I read a book a few years back by my friend Tom Friedman from the New York Times. I'm sure, Michelle, you know him or know of Tom. Called the title of the book is "The World is Flat." Yes, the world is flat, but when it comes to some very critical technologies or critical products like batteries, semiconductors, solar, defense, and geopolitical tensions arise, and supply chains can become fragmented. So we saw that, during the COVID days. But leaving that aside, batteries have become very political. And today, essentially, China controls the entire ecosystem for lithium batteries. More specifically, the kind of batteries that Sparkz is working on. It's called lithium iron phosphate. They control that. Even though, as I said earlier, these batteries, the lithium iron phosphate, or it's a mouthful, so I'll just shorten it. It's LFP. They were invented here and they were developed here, but China controls the ecosystem. Now, if we being the United States, has to regain, and I really want to emphasize regain its supremacy because, as I said earlier, this was developed here. We need to have control of our destiny. And in order to do that, there has to be companies, plural, like Sparkz, that are basically creating the ecosystem because we cannot depend on China or, for that matter, any other country for such a critical product, such a critical technology as lithium batteries, because they not only power your cars, your consumer electronics, your cell phones, laptops, homes, and data centers. So data centers are obviously taking off, but they need a lot of batteries. So if these are what I call the mission critical applications, well, electric vehicles possibly is not, but a few of these are mission critical applications. We definitely need to control our own destiny. And that's the reason that Sparkz has ventured to be the first player, and right now the only player to do so.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up what these batteries are used for, because I think that's what people think of with lithium batteries. But your batteries are different than the everyday consumer would use and what China is producing, the smaller ones. Explain, like, in a non-technical sense, what your
Sure.
batteries do and who uses them and what are they used for?
Well, China doesn't go just for the smaller batteries. They produce the larger batteries too. So, without getting too technical, LFP offers several advantages over the other type of lithium ion battery. The first one is it's almost about 40% lower in cost, which is huge. Everyone who thinks about uh, electric vehicles basically thinks that, yes, battery being a predominant cost of electric vehicles are very expensive, hence EVs are expensive. So LFP is 40-ish% lower than the other lithium ion battery, the incumbent solution. Secondly, it has almost about 5 times the life of that battery. So if that battery lasts you, let's say, about 5 years in your electric vehicle, this can go about 20 plus years, almost 25 years. That makes a lot of sense for a plethora, like a wide array of applications. The third one, which is very important, is safety.
Mhm.
So LFP is a lot safer. It is not susceptible to what people have seen in the other type of lithium ion battery, which is called thermal runaway, causing fires and other safety issues. The fourth big competitive advantage, Michelle, is the supply chain. The incumbent lithium ion battery uses nickel and cobalt. And cobalt comes predominantly from DRC, or Democratic Republic of Congo, and China controls that supply chain. Nickel comes from Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Malaysia, and again, China controls that supply chain. So, in the case of lithium iron phosphate batteries, or LFP, we have a lot of lithium. 5 years ago, if we had done this podcast, I would have been like, yes, we have to depend on some overseas regions or some foreign nations for lithium. Today, that's not the case. We have lithium in North Carolina. We have lithium in Nevada. Soon in Arkansas. Fairly soon in places like Utah, Texas, etc. So lithium is plentiful. And don't forget, not too far from where we are doing this podcast, in southern part of our state, in Salton Sea, people call that the Saudi Arabia of lithium. I mean, I don't know what the hell that's supposed to mean.
I think I've heard white gold. Lithium is called
Yeah,
white gold.
whatever it is, right?
Right.
But there's a lot of lithium there in Salton Sea. So lithium is not an issue. on the supply side. Iron is plentiful. Yeah. Go to Minnesota, North Dakota, a lot of iron. And phosphate also, we have plenty of that in Florida. So supply chain is a major advantage with LFP over the nickel or the cobalt type of lithium ion battery. So these advantages open LFP to, as I said earlier, a wide array of applications, all the way from powering the grid, data centers, the AI infrastructure, to powering your home, to essentially the mobility applications like off-road vehicles, think forklifts, think the ground support equipment at airports, think farm equipment, mining equipment, and then look at passenger vehicles or electric vehicles. All of these essentially can be satisfied with LFP given the 4 or 5 advantages that I talked about. And LFP has really gained a lot of traction over the last 5, 6 years. Today, it's the dominant type or dominant chemistry of lithium ion batteries globally. So, from an application standpoint, Sparkz is looking at all 3 applications. We definitely have uh, grid as our target market. We actually have customers there. We have commercial off-road vehicles like forklifts and other similar applications that are off-road, and then soon electric vehicles. I would say soon, if you were to ask me to quantify it, possibly in the next 2, 3 years, not before then. Yeah, but all 3 applications, and then not to forget defense applications. So UAVs, drones, and other applications within defense.
Sounds from A to Z.
A to Z, it is.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And the thing with nickel and cobalt, with China controlled, there's human rights issues there as well, with child labor involved in those mines.
Very much so. Very much so. Uh, Especially cobalt coming from Congo. That is, I would say, the predominant motivation for me to start Sparkz. Uh, I worked at the other side of the fence. I worked at the in the U.S. government at Department of Energy, and I was there for 3 years, where we looked at this whole supply chain issue, and in our very thorough investigation, this was in the 16, 17, 18 time frame, we actually were exposed to all the I would call it very questionable practices in Congo, which China was clearly a part of, using child labor and essentially very inhuman mining practices, which there have been articles and books written. I think there's a book called The Blood Diamond by Siddharth Kara, and captures very well how just to control the supply chain, control the cobalt supply chain, entities all the way from mining companies to countries, including China, are basically manipulating human life. And this has resulted in quite a few fatalities, especially kids, because kids are sent down into these mines to basically extract, these are called artisanal mines, to extract cobalt without any proper gear, etc. So, yeah, that was the key motivation for Sparkz to be started, to essentially go cobalt free.
Well, what about extracting the minerals here in the US then? Are there guidelines or policies or regulations for that to mine the lithium and the iron and the phosphate and have, you said, we buy from the vendors
Yeah.
to make our products, but are there issues with the mining right now and getting those minerals?
So, look, mining practices, we've had, US has traditionally had a lot of mining and still does, uh, coal and a lot of other minerals. But the mining practices in the United States is not questionable, right? So that clearly is something that can be very easily addressed. That yes, there are laws, there are rules and regulations that these mining companies adhere to and adhere to very strictly.
In general, is it an easy process for companies to mine those minerals to get them to Sparkz to make our batteries?
So from a, let's say, from a permitting,
Yeah.
everyone talks about that. Yeah, permitting is or could be a fairly long process, an arduous process in the United States. For sure, it is. But lithium, for example, it's not new, but it's called DLE. It's not a new process. DLE stands for direct lithium extraction. So it's not really going into the ground with shovels or with excavators to dig out these mines. So it's relatively easier, relatively very lot cleaner. So from a permitting process standpoint, we have seen that, for giving you the example of Nevada, right next door to where we are, uh, Lithium Americas is one company that is setting up a lithium extraction plant there in Thacker Pass. And they've moved fairly quickly in getting the permitting, etc. Same thing with the big oil majors who are doing so in Arkansas. Names like Equinor from Norway, then I think Chevron's also there, and BP also is there. So Arkansas has attracted the big oil majors, and they've all moved fairly quickly. There's a company called Standard Lithium that's a joint venture between Equinor and another company. So they all have moved fairly quickly from setting up a pilot, executing on a pilot, getting the permits, and moving on to the uh, mass extraction or mass production of lithium. So, no, I think it's not uh, a hurdle. Iron, we have been, iron mine, iron ore extraction has been going on, so that's well established. And same thing with phosphate.
Mm-hmm.
So when people come to me, and believe me, yours is not the first time I've heard that question, that is it a concern? No, we have all three here: lithium, iron, and phosphate. So that's not a concern.
Listening to you talk about this and say you've been researching lithium batteries for 30 years, why are we on the Late Show? I mean, why is this happening now? Why wasn't this happening? How did China come in, take hold, take it over there? And we've got all this plentiful in the US. Are we on the Late Show? Can we catch up?
Well, Sanjeev was not there. So that's one reason. But my friend, you're trying to get me to go political here. So I will try to remain on the fringes of getting too political. But
Is it political? Is that why? I mean,
to a great extent,
okay,
yes.
okay.
To a great extent, it is political. Look, as I said, yes, the United States is where it all started with the development. But somehow, the community, whether it was the researchers or people who were into product development or engineering or manufacturing, they were all under the impression that United States, we can't manufacture. That's baloney. That's, pardon my language, but that's bullshit. Okay? Yes, we can. A small company like Sparkz moved very quickly and is, establishing that yes, we can manufacture here and we can go from start to finish. So yes, you can manufacture.
Well, talk about that scaling up. I know.
Yeah.
So to our listeners, Sanjeev, this is his third company. And you had another company, H Power, that I think I heard you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, you went from a few employees to 800 employees in 3 years. Is that the right?
Yeah, H Power scaled up in about 6 years or so.
In 6 years.
Yeah,
so, I mean, that's pretty fast.
that is pretty fast. Yeah.
So, how do you, Sparkz is planning to scale up. Are there any lessons you learned from H Power that you would do differently, or how is Sparkz going to scale up making these products that are in such demand, which we'll get into about the data centers and how Sparkz batteries will power data centers and taxpayers won't, So that's the good part of that, which we can talk about. But, talk about the scaling up and what does that take and challenges or lessons learned from your previous business.
So, a lot of lessons learned, Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, I was almost 30 pounds lighter, so I would run 8 minute a mile and could do marathons. And after the marathon, go drink beer or wine and still be able to go for a run next day. Can't do that no more.
That's because you're older.
Yes, that's because I'm older. Yes, more mature.
Yes, because you're experienced.
Yes, experience. There you go.
Yes,
So,
yes.
a lot of lessons learned with experience. Let's just call it that way. Look, you talked about H power, then there was Urja. And by the way, Michelle, that's not my wife's name or an ex-girlfriend's name or a pet's name. Urja means energy. I'm from India, and the Indian language of Hindi, it means energy. So both companies, there was some sort of an objective in starting them, and so was Sparkz. Spark's objective was clearly, people say you can't manufacture batteries here, and as I said, just used some very strong expletives to say that yes, you can. But it was all about creating the ecosystem. Now, I think you possibly understand what I mean by the ecosystem. But the biggest lesson from both, my days in the world of startups has been stay focused. There'll be a lot of noise pulling you in every which direction. But if you stay focused, yeah, you can do a lot. So that is the biggest lesson.
What have you learned since you're a marathon runner? He's completed 8 marathons. With that training, right, as a marathon runner, it takes time and consistency and discipline. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Is that how you're looking at Sparkz? Is Sparkz a sprint or is it a marathon?
Yeah, your entire body is screaming for mercy, right? So, despite all of that, if you can stay focused, and as you said, it's not a 100-meter sprint, it is a 26.2. And I said 26.2 because even 0.2 matters.
Hurts.
Right? You yourself are an Ironman triathlete 8 times? 12? No, actually 12 times.
11 times.
11 times. The 12th is happening pretty soon. So, you're alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And every cell in your body is begging for mercy. But in the case of a startup, you're not alone. You have a full team. Look, we have you, right? For doing podcasts. So
and other things, please.
Yes, exactly. So if you know what your goal is and you have a plan, there will always be digressions. There will always be very, the diversions that might look appealing to you. But you need to weigh in. People say entrepreneurs are risk takers. I don't agree with that. I say entrepreneurs are, or is someone who is measured the risk, and then she or he has decided, this is my plan A, this is my plan B. If plan A fails, I'll bring in plan B. If plan B fails, I'll bring in plan C, right? So that's how success happens in the world of startups. And that's what I meant by staying focused. Mm-hmm. That you have your goal, keep going, and thou shalt find a way.
And there's injuries along the way and setbacks that happen.
Yeah.
And I imagine that happens in business as well.
Yes.
And I mean, you started Sparkz around the pandemic, and you came through. How did you do that?
I was just getting bored at home. No. Well, that in itself was a learning experience, right? Because I'm used to, as someone who has done startups, I'm used to being around engineers and doing building a system, including lending a hand myself. But COVID times were different. So that in itself was a learning experience, that if you have to make progress, how do you do so in a time when you are closeted? Yeah. So a lot of experiences, a lot of learnings came from that particular experience, because that taught me, the biggest learning from that was that sometimes nature dictates the pace at which you're going to move. And COVID taught that to me, and I'm sure to lots and lots of people across the globe, that yes, nature can dictate at the pace at which you shall move. But keep moving. So that's what we did.
And you stayed focused and stayed consistent, and here we are in 2026.
Yeah.
So, how would you describe what happened with West Virginia? A year ago, you were planning to scale up and have a manufacturing plant in West Virginia.
Yeah.
And so, how would you describe that experience and what happened?
Well, West Virginia, we were very. I still like the state. I have a lot of friends there, both in the government sector as well as in the private sector. West Virginia offered, rather, this, the opportunity there was a very good one for us to set up manufacturing, to scale up. However, there were a few challenges, and that is the big learning, because we had to pivot. And pivot we did very fast. So now we have our plant in Sacramento. The big challenge was, I live here in California. My team is here in California. In West Virginia, it was going to be basically a 6-hour flight across the continent. So that to me was a big, big, big challenge. The one learning that I strongly believe in is keep your manufacturing and scale up facility, if possible, as close to your engineering. Keep your engineering / product development as close to your R&D as possible. I'm not saying that they should be in the same roof if economics don't make sense. But in this case, to pivot from West Virginia and set up in Sacramento basically was, I would say, that was a very good decision, because our R&D and our engineering is here in Sacramento. Prior to that, this was in Livermore. And so our phase 1 of production is now in Sacramento. And basically all three teams, the R&D, the product development, and the manufacturing people, can talk to each other. Now, will we go full scale production? Like, let's say our second factory here in Sacramento, possibly not. But we'll try to keep it as close as possible, maybe driving distance, so that folks, when you transition from these phases, there is a need for a lot of human engagement. And that is a big learning, actually, from the whole West Virginia experience.
Would you say, did you take something where you discouraged, but then you were able to rise above it? You were able to pivot, like you said. And so you just move on. You're a businessman. You got to move on. If it doesn't work out, you still got this great product. It's time to move on.
Yeah. Have you, in the 11 races you've done, and I'm sure a lot of training, Michelle, have you ever fallen down?
No, I haven't.
You're a
No,
lucky
but I've been
person.
hurting.
Yeah,
But
hurting,
I
we
want
all
to
do,
fall. I
right?
want to lay down and take a nap.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
no, I haven't fallen
Yeah.
actually.
I've had a lot of
Yeah.
injuries and while
Yeah.
running, etc. So
Yeah.
the
I've had
one,
injuries.
I'm sure you have,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So one key lesson learned is,
Yeah.
when you fall and you pick yourself up, don't look at who has passed by you. There'll be a lot of people who have passed by you. Okay. What you need to focus on is, yes, I fell, and you dust yourself and see if you can get back to the pace at which you were running. If you're running at 8 minute a mile, which Sanjeev doesn't do anymore. He's very fortunate if he can do 14 minute a mile. But, levity aside, if you focus on, yes, whatever your pace was before you fell, if you can get back to the pace, just focus on that. And the whole experience is not only just the West Virginia, but the entire experience of a startup is get back to the course on which the course you charted when you said, I'm going to achieve that particular goal. And West Virginia was, like I said, I have so many friends there. I still remain in touch with a lot of my friends. They were very understanding and encouraging. There was no hard feelings that, oh, you're not coming to the state and stuff like that. So that clearly was what helped me that, yep, it's not going to work out. So let's just stay the course and get back to the velocity, the speed at which we were moving.
And how is Sparkz able to keep climbing when other battery companies are not? You sent me an article from the Western battery industry, and it talks about the graveyard and a dozen battery companies that have gone under.
Yeah.
Why? What are the, I guess, how is it that Sparkz is able to, be the phoenix here rising
Sure.
and other companies are going under?
Yeah. Goes back to what we just discussed, Michelle. Stay the course. Don't look at who has gone ahead or who has fallen. Literally, I feel bad for the folks who have fallen. And I know a lot of those founders, know a lot of those CEOs, and literally wish them best. Hopefully, I always feel that they can get up and come out of insolvency or bankruptcy and restart, and that happens quite a few times. So as far as why, I think you used a good analogy. I'm still trying to process that, the phoenix. So as far as we're concerned, I think that's basically what it is, that we've remained focused on creating the ecosystem, and it's always one step at a time, right? So maybe this is the time to talk about what we mean by the ecosystem, Michelle.
Yeah.
Lithium battery manufacturing is a 3-step process. First, you make the material. Then you make something called cells, okay? And then you make the complete battery system. So this is going to be a lithium battery 101 for you, and you know this.
Perfect.
But some
We
of
need
your
it.
viewers.
Yeah.
So every battery has what they call electrodes, positive and negative. And car battery, they call them, in the lead acid, the standard lead acid battery, which is used in the cars, not the electric vehicle, but the regular cars. They call them plates, right? So even in lithium batteries, those the cathode and the anode basically are made from certain materials. And that is what has been missing in the United States. The material that goes into the cathode, for example, for LFP batteries, it's called cathode active material. United States has zero production of that. China controls 100%.
Isn't that what Sparkz does?
That's what Sparkz does. So we are the
So there's
only.
one.
There's only one. Cathode active material, which is actually almost 35% of the cost of the battery. And that's what dictates the performance. That's what dictates the safety. That's what dictates the life. So it's a very critical component of the battery. And we let that production go to China. Sparkz came in and said, no, we shall change that. So we changed that. We are the only ones producing it here in Sacramento. So that's what step one. Step two was to take that material and take the other materials, like for the anode, for the other electrode, etc., and make it into cells. And we did that too, one step at a time. And then about a year or so ago, we started making the complete battery pack. So basically, one step at a time, making the cathode material, making the cells, and that I'm trying to simplify it. But all of these required engineering and product development and a lot of time devoted towards that. So 3 years or 3.5 years towards the cathode active material or the CAM, then about a year and a half or so, or maybe a couple of years for the cells, and it became like a relay where one was starting to get to completion, so we would start the second one, and then about a year or so ago, the complete system, and we have been shipping complete systems now for close to a year. But stay tuned. We shall be, or you shall be, given your role as the head storyteller, you shall be announcing a lot of very exciting products for very exciting markets. And when I say products, I mean the complete battery system, not just the cathode material or the cells. So that's how we did it, one step at a time. And when we would get that ready, we would take it to production. So that's the ecosystem.
Is this where I can ask you about that product powering data centers?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so that's without revealing too much or however much you want to reveal.
Yep.
Tell us about that. I mean, everyone's, there's so much controversy over data centers right now and communities concerned. How is Sparkz going to help the grid?
Yeah. More than help the grid, Michelle. I think, again, our mission being that, yes, we want to help communities aside from introducing products that are made here in the US with supply chain here in the US. When and I'm sure you and your viewers do the same, when they hear about data centers, the first thing that comes to mind is, ouch, is that going to, take the electrons away from me that my local utility or a rural co-op or whoever is serving you is going to give that away to the data centers? And if not, does that mean that my rate is going to go up, my utility cost? And very recently, President Trump announced something he called the rate reduction pledge or rate protection pledge. So that's where Sparkz comes into play, that you can actually use the Sparkz batteries. And again, please stay tuned. This is for your viewers that we are announcing a product fairly soon here. Uh, the battery itself, coupled with certain other solutions, can be the data center's own grid. Or they can call it microgrid or nanogrid or whatever the case might be. But it would relieve the pressure on the grid. So that is one very exciting application for a market for the Sparkz product. The second approach to doing that is that, yes, if the data center is connected to the grid and the grid is there to satisfy the data center, you can actually use the battery as a backup. And the batteries actually have several modes of operating. For example, it flattens out what they call the voltage regulation or frequency regulation, which with the grid you do see that. And these fluctuations can actually harm the GPUs or essentially the hardware that's there in the data center. So batteries do a very good job of what they call load leveling. And that actually is also possible with, I talked about the microgrid, coupling the Sparkz battery with natural gas generators. You can provide that kind of load leveling because natural gas also has that load leveling as an issue. And so that is a very sexy application, if I may use that word. They use that in Silicon Valley all the time. So why not use it here in Sacramento? But that is an application, and everyone is thinking, how do I get the electrons for the data centers? And I think you started the podcast by saying BYOB, bring your own batteries, right? So the data center folks if they're listening to this, yes, they can bring their own beer. Oh, sorry, I meant bring your own batteries with the Sparkz LFP solution, which is available as we speak. Yeah.
Yeah. And everybody needs a data center, whether you
Yes.
like it or not, every single person.
Yes.
Okay, so now might be the time where I reached out to our team
Yep.
and said, what do you want to ask our CEO? So do you want to hear some of those questions?
Sure.
Okay. If we fail to build a domestic battery supply chain, what are the real consequences?
Who was it that asked that question? Please let me know. I think
Do you want to
payroll is
know?
next week. So, huh?
Do you want to know?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think the word fail exists in Sanjeev's dictionary. I don't think it exists in any of my team members' dictionaries. So,
I've never heard you say that.
yep.
Ever.
So I don't think that is. If this person was asking it as a joke, we will let it pass. But no, that's not even going to be possible.
Okay. Well, I think we talked about this, but I'll ask it. What's unique about the spirit of Sparkz compared to the other companies in the space?
Michelle, you answer that question. Why don't you take a stab at that?
What makes us unique?
Yes. How about the culture?
Oh, our culture?
Yeah.
It's definitely, there's no idea is a bad idea. If you have an idea, bring it to me. I mean, I remember talking to you about something I had and I said, hey, this might be a pipe dream. And I told you about it. And you said, that's not a pipe dream. Do it. You know, and so I feel heard, I feel valued, and I feel we are a team. And in the short time I've been there, it's a little family we have going over there at MAP.
Yep.
You know?
I think very rightly put, very aptly put, Michelle. The Sparkz family, as you call it, I call it Team Sparkz. Actually, that's our intellectual property. People feel that their intellectual property is patents. I mean, not people, but a lot of companies believe that yes, the company's value will be enhanced by their IP being their patents. Very much so, yes. Patents, I'm not discounting that. Your technology makes a lot of impact on how the company is valued, how the company will do. But the team is or the Sparkz team is our intellectual property.
How many patents do you have?
Me personally?
Or Sparkz or your companies or, you know, how many do you
Sparkz
have?
has more than a dozen, and quite a few are pending, and quite a few are in the pipeline. Lot more than a dozen. And me personally, I've never counted, but I think between H Power, Urja, and Sparkz, and I think also when I worked at Lawrence Berkeley Labs, one corrected during that time also. Quite a few, maybe about 30, 40, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, here's another question from another family member.
Yeah.
Where do you see Sparkz making the biggest impact?
Ensuring that we have very happy and satisfied customers. Secondly, ensuring that our team members, like you call them the Sparkz family, they continue to thrive and be very happy. Get up in the morning. I'll give a shout out to a good friend who is our senior mechanical design engineer, William. William said the other day in one of those all hands meeting, he says, I just love it when I get up in the morning and I'm all excited to come to work, right? That's the kind of attitude. So making sure that the team is, continue to be very happy and continue to thrive. And then, ensuring that, look, this Sparkz is doing it for ensuring that US regains its global supremacy in lithium-ion batteries. So that's also very important for us. And last but clearly not the least, there are investors who have invested in us for over the last 5-6 years, and some of them have been with us from day one. So we want to ensure that our shareholder value is increased, and continue to make sure that their money is put to good use and they get a return on their investment. So those four are very important for me: customers, team, uh, make sure that US becomes number one in lithium ion batteries, from development to, like I said, mine to market. So development all the way till market, and clearly our investors and our shareholders.
Well, I will tell you that was William's question.
Oh, I knew that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. How about this one? What are others in the battery space doing better than Sparkz that you would like to see the company take on someday or maybe implement now?
I told you, right? I don't look at people
Yeah.
around us, but yeah, a lot of companies I have a lot of respect for. This is a big ocean, and plenty of companies are doing very well. So all the best to them.
And what does the next 5 years at Sparkz look like? I always love that question in an interview, right? Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I did not ask you that, Michelle.
No, I know you didn't.
Yeah.
You want to know what Sanjeev asked me? How are you going to take us global?
Yeah, exactly.
How are you going to tell our story to everyone?
Yeah, you need to answer that question still.
Which one?
How will you take us global?
I told you how.
So next 5 years, get back to 8 minutes a mile. That ain't happening. Look, I think we have I think strictly from the standpoint of manufacturing, we are scaling up very fast in all three areas: in the area of cathode material, in the area of making cells, and the complete battery system. So it's execution. And next 5 years is going to be a lot of execution, and I'm sure a lot of falls along the way. So picking ourselves up, dusting ourselves, and then getting back on the course. So that's pretty much summarizing where we want to be. And in the process, we are going to be introducing a lot of new products. And as I said earlier, stay tuned. I think over the course of next 3, 4, 5 months, there'll be a lot of exciting products, and that is going to continue. So who knows? I talked about electric vehicles and said that's maybe 3 years away or something like that. So yeah, I think LFP has a very good shot at EVs here in the United States. In China, they're already using LFP for electric vehicles. So why not here? This could be your second car in the house, or for someone who is just doing city commute, where you do not worry too much about the range aspect of it. But also, do stay tuned. I'm not going to reveal. You talked about patents. We have about a half a dozen patents on that. A very exciting aspect of LFP, which will come out as a product in the next couple of years. That could be the game changer for the electric vehicle market. So I think, yep, a lot of new products, new markets, and executing at a good pace.
So in 5 years, BYOB is not just for data centers, it's for all the consumers, probably. Maybe?
Maybe, yes.
Okay. We won't make those promises, but
Yeah.
keep thinking BYOB, bring your own batteries.
Totally.
People want to be in control of their own power, really. Yeah. Well, as we wrap up here, Sanjeev, I've heard you tell a story, and if you want to share when you were a young kid and you got some great advice by somebody everybody knows. Would you like to share that story?
This was year 2006. This was in Urja, my last venture. And we had just raised our first round of investment from a venture capital group, very well known venture capital group called Sequoia. And I was a first time CEO, as you said, a young kid. So they told me, they said, well, go meet this one entrepreneur and see, maybe he can invest in the company, or at the very least, he can, maybe become an advisor to you. So I end up at this person's office in Silicon Valley. I walk in and he looks at me. He's like, "Are you from India?" I'm not. He's not asked me to sit as yet, but he says, "He asked me this question." Yeah, I don't think I look like I'm from Japan, right? I mean, I didn't say that, but that's what was going in my mind. So he says, "Look, I've been to your country, and your country is a very fascinating country, and I learned a lot from your country. Here I'm thinking, I'm here to talk about my startup, see if you can invest in the company, and you're talking about India and fascination with India and all of that." So, I just humored him along. The next thing he says is, I was in your country and I see this elephant, and that was very innovative for me. By then, the thing going on in my mind was like, am I really meeting the right person I was supposed to meet, or have I come to some wrong office here? So he continues to talk and he says, "Look, I was in India and I see this elephant walk past, and the elephant had a little bell in its neck, and the bell would ring, and the kids in the homes would hear the bell, and they would come out, give some money to the owner of the animal, or owner of the elephant, and get a ride on the elephant." He says that's very innovative. By now, I'm extremely curious because forget my startup, but I want to understand this whole innovation thing from his angle, from how he sees it. And he says, "Look, the elephant is like a large organization. The bell is a startup. The large organization, whether it is a private company or a government company, they move slow. They will keep going on their, the path that they have chosen. The startup, the bell, is going to make very fast decisions in hiring, in getting customers, in trying to get money from all sources, in trying to get a product out. Everything is a very fast decision. That's the bell. But because the bell is in the neck of the elephant and the elephant is moving slowly, the bell rings. You take the bell away from the elephant. No one's going to hear the elephant. The customers, in this case, the kids will not come out, give a money or give a buck to the owner. The revenue's gone. Same thing. If a startup joins hands with a big organization, wonders will happen. Whether it is in hiring, whether it's in new product development, whether it's getting into a new market, whether it is scaling up, all that will happen when the startup and the big company move together. If you take them apart, neither of them are going to achieve quickly what they want to achieve. So that was something that this person told me. Michelle, you already know the name of the person, but maybe that's a question for your viewers as to who that entrepreneur was. And I'll leave it at that. Let them take a guess. And I went back to him a few times, became an advisor, but more important than that, heard a lot of stories about his travels and how he saw innovation, because that clearly is very innovative. Innovation is not just developing an innovative product. Innovation comes in the form of process. Innovation comes in the form of a business model. Innovation is your innovative thinking. So that is what meeting with this entrepreneur taught me, that basically it starts with the thinking, the whole innovation thing, and then that is what percolates into a new product, into a new process, into a startup, into a company, into an ecosystem.
So you were sitting in front of the right person.
I was sitting in front of the right person, yes.
Well, it's been very educational and inspirational today. Hopefully there's some good advice here for others who are thinking of whatever their idea may be, that they can learn from you.
Sure, I hope so too. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sparkz Energy Explained podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Bandur, along with CEO and founder of Sparkz, Sanjeev Malhotra. See you next time. And don't forget our one rule, BYOB, bring your own batteries.